Alright, so this is Kieran, and what we're doing today is we are going to be reacting to a debate between Sadia Khan and Matthew Hussey on Lewis House's podcast. Now, what I find to be quite interesting about this is that in the kind of red pill dating space, there's a lot of talk of women being overly emotional and afraid of stats and statistics and just going with their gut or how they want things to be rather than actually focusing on reality. I listened to a bit of this debate so far. I wasn't even planning to react to it, but the bit that I have listened to, I'm just hearing Sadia spitting facts. Hold on. Yeah, I'm just hearing Sadia spitting facts. I'm just hearing the truth. And it seems to me like Matthew is the one who can't actually face reality. But let's have a watch and let's see the whole thing, see what we think.
Thing about them that they're either missing or that they need to work on to overcome.
They're unable to have difficult conversations with the people they need to have it with. Wow. So instead, they just find a way to release the energy and mask what that need is, rather than actually confront the issue where it should be. So whoever they have fallen in love with or started a life with, they started it on more kind of on the dynamic that you were describing in your 20s. They started it on that dynamic of suppressing who they truly are, suppressing their true needs, but not having the courage to walk away and not having the courage to end it. And as a result, they've had to maintain this false identity for the rest of their life, which as they get older and they get more disgruntled and they fear, like the fear of losing their family decreases. As men age, it's not like their sex drive goes up, but their willingness to cheat kind of sometimes goes up because they're like, oh, they're a bit more brave. So they end up then, engaging in behaviors that they shouldn't be doing. And this all stems from if they just had a more vulnerable, honest conversation with the person they love to begin with, they wouldn't find themselves searching for themselves in other people.
Could you, when you say men get older and they get more kind of brave about cheating, help me understand.
What I noticed is, like in the beginning stages, because they're still in the people stages in a fearful state, they don't risk it as much. As children come along and as they feel less and less appreciated, I'm not saying they deserve appreciation all the time, some men really are difficult, but as they mentally feel like I've spent 10 years being loyal to her, and they almost feel like it's a credit, like 10 years I deserve, so I deserve. So they say, I've done this, and I've always been a great husband, and I've always been picking up the kids, and I've always, kind of suppressed my sexual desires whenever she doesn't want it. Now I deserve something special.
I'm not getting what I've needed for the last 10 years or what I've wanted.
Yeah. And I'm not saying they're wrong or right, but that's the mental conversation they have. And because they develop this deserved entitlement, I'm not saying maybe they do deserve it, maybe they don't. They then start to
We should probably say it's wrong. Right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing, sometimes what happens, and in their defense, sometimes what happens is they have created a really good, and they have been a good husband for many years, but in the process of being a good husband, it's been done by suppressing their needs. So they sometimes
but they haven't been courageous in expressing them either.
That's the main problem. It's not that the wife is this evil wife that deprives them of sex or deprives them of intimacy. Some men have gone months, years without getting that fundamental need met, but they never voiced it enough. They might say it in a jokey way or in a drunken night out that I don't get enough sex, but they don't say it in a constructive way.
Why do you think men are more willing to cheat and then have a courageous conversation and say to their wife or their partner, here's what I really want sexually?
Because what they truly desire sexually is going to be met with some resistance with the partner they selected. And they understand that.
Or they think it will.
They think it will.
Yeah.
And they think that it's almost uncomfortable. Whatever they're desiring, they almost, when you have a wife and you've seen her breastfeed your children and you've gone through that kind of experience with her, it almost feels unfair to tell her your fantasy about what you want done and stuff.
Yeah.
So they have these two kind of compartments when it comes to sex, and then that one almost feels unaligned to the woman they married.
Interesting.
But why?
So this is an interesting thing now. Something that I preach, something that I coach a lot is that as the man, when you're with a woman, you set the sexual tone for the relationship. So what does that mean? It means that if you guys are going to be swingers who have threesomes with other people, you need to be the one to bring that up at the beginning. If you guys are going to have a casual, average, bog standard, completely monogamous relationship, you're the one who's going to set it from the beginning. If you guys are going to have a fun and kinky little bit of sex life, you set that from the beginning. What she's basically saying, without really saying it, is that, say as a man, You get with a woman. Now, who knows? Maybe she doesn't even realize this, but I'm just going to say this now. So, man, you're getting with a woman and you've got some kink, right? Some kink. Who knows? Maybe you want to piss on her or have her pee on you. Maybe you do. But you don't bring it up. So then what happens is, as you guys are together for months and months or years, she is being programmed to see you as one way, right? Well, that way being whatever it is that you have put across to her, which for most men is effectively, we just have a normal bog standard average sex life. The longer that you go without showing your true self, the more programmed she becomes, and the more you will see that eventually you'll reach a point where she just doesn't want to change because she sees you as one thing. You have like sexually set the tone and the standard for the relationship. A fantastic example is this, right? Have you seen that show on Netflix called Sex Life? It's either called Sex Life or Sex and Life. That show is about a woman called Billy who's married to a man called Cooper. They have a fantastic relationship, but she's bored of their sex life, and she is constantly fantasizing over the amazing sex she had with her ex Brad. Cooper finds out that she's unhappy with the sex life, and at one point he wants to spice things up by taking her to a swinging party. When they're in the swinging party where everybody's having sex with each other, Billy doesn't want to do it. Now here's the thing. She doesn't not want to do it because she has self-respect and she doesn't see herself as that kind of person. That's not it. She refuses to do it because, as she says to Cooper, that's not who I want us to be. That's what she says. Now, just so we're clear, she's really miserable with the sex life. Cooper even says to her, you would do it if it was Brad. If it was Brad, you would happily jump into this threesome. And she goes, yes, but that's not who I want us to be. So she's saying, I don't want us to be like this, but she's miserable about the fact that she's not having this with him. And she's constantly pining over Brad. And she is literally prepared to destroy the relationship with Cooper rather than actually engage with Cooper, the stuff that she really wants to do that she would have happily done with Brad. It's the kind of thing that men need to be aware of.
Why are we talking about this just in the vein of men and not women, saying that I've put in all of this work, I've raised these kids, I've been here 20 years, I quite feel entitled to a younger, hotter man now? Why are we talking about this just in the context of men?
In just my experience of it, what happens in my experience of women that love their husband and have this connected lifestyle, their desire for sex decreases as they feel more connected. As they have the kids, as they're stable, they feel like, oh, we had the adventurous sex in the first 10 years. Like, I don't need to do this at 45 years old. Like, I've done my time.
On their stats, though, I don't know the stats on this,
yeah.
But aren't the stats actually more damning sometimes for women than men in how many women cheat in long-term relationships?
I would imagine they are so, but I would still say it might be because they had a people-pleaser kind of husband, that they couldn't get that masculinity out of her, they couldn't get those courageous conversations out of her, they couldn't get that confrontational nature out of him, and they found it in a man that would just say, I want this from you, I want that from you, and that make them feel a bit more alive than the guy that's kind of suppressing himself. But again, this is just, like I said, I have a skewed version of male version of events. So in my experience, if they think they've done 10 years of loyalty, they deserve 10 years of like enjoying their life.
Or
if
even
they've done
1 year, or like
even
something,
1
right?
year.
They're like, okay, I can just have a few escorts every now and then.
Yeah, particularly if they've been deprived of sex. They can almost compromise with any other deprivation, but when they feel deprived of sex, they feel like they've earned the right to free sex as they get older.
Wow. But but what can men do in that position? Let's say there's a man who's been in a 5 to 15 year marriage. They've got a family, they have kids, and they've tried to do their best as a husband and a leader and a father. But they are just craving some type of sexual adventure. And they, deep down, don't think that their wife can give them that. Or maybe they can't get out of their head what they've seen the last 15 years of their wife breastfeeding and being a motherly figure and not a sexual figure. Whatever it is.
Yeah, the switch has turned off.
Yeah, maybe the switch is turned off because they're now like motherly as opposed to sexual being, whatever it might be. What can a man do to communicate what they want sexually without hurting the woman they're with?
I think the first thing is to watch your habits. If you are constantly stimulating yourself with too much pornography and too much social media and stuff, that's not going to help your situation by looking at novel situations again and again. So watch what you consume. The second conversation is you've just got to remember what means more to you. Does the thrill of sex mean more to you than the safety of a marriage and kids? Now, if you recognize that marriage means more, but it doesn't mean I don't want the thrill, I still want that, I still deserve that, then what it moves on to is having conversations with your wife to understand how you can ignite that sex appeal in her. Perhaps there's something you're doing that's making her not feel like you are not tapping into that femininity in her. It's sometimes a dynamic. So ask her, is there something that I used to do or I can do that would make you feel more connected to me? And they say, oh, in the beginning she was so wild, but maybe in the beginning you were taking her out more, or maybe in the beginning you were texting her a lot more, or maybe in the beginning you weren't turning to pornography on nights when you were. So maybe there was behaviors in you in the beginning that ignited a part of her that made her more.
Yeah.
So have those conversations. And sometimes some women are just plain difficult. And I understand.
This is a good point. So it's kind of like this. As men, we often say, as Sadia was just saying, that you get into a relationship with a woman and she puts in less effort over time. And maybe she was wearing sexy lingerie for you at first, but she stops. Maybe she would do certain acts on you at first, she'd do it all the time, she stops. Maybe you guys would have frequent sex all the time, but eventually she stops. And the truth is that while you should have a conversation about that and get to the root cause of what's going on, you should also be aware of, number one, that you might not ever actually get the truth. That's number one. Number two, something to remember is that you have to continually try to sleep with your girlfriend. What does that mean? What it means is this. Any man listening to this right now knows, especially if you're in a relationship or like a marriage, you know that when you first tried to get with her, you were showing her your best side. You put your best foot forward. You were being a certain type of guy. Why were you being that certain type of guy? Because deep down you believe that if you weren't that certain type of guy, she wouldn't want to be with you. She wouldn't want you. But then what happens? What happens is that as you get more and more comfortable, you stop caring about being that guy, because on some level you don't think she'll leave. And to a degree, you're right, because the more time you spent with someone, the less likely they are to just bounce. But that guy is who she signed up for. And if you're no longer that guy, she's not going to want you as much. And if that wasn't the case, you would have just been however you are now from the get-go. So just realize that if there's something you're doing, like let's say you're always sending her witty text messages or something like this, or you're always coming up with creative, impromptu, fun things to do. If that's like what you guys do, it's got to continue. If you don't continue to be the same guy, her interest is going to dwindle.
Circumstances, but until you've tried what you did in the beginning, you can't completely complain that that's gone. Yeah. So,
and before I jump to you, Matthew, do you think from the men that you're working with, that you hear conversations with, are you hearing that more men cheat or more women cheat?
From my experiences, more women. Yeah, from my experiences, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Is women are naturally, in my experience, and being a woman myself, is we're a bit more aware of a man's propensity to cheat. So we're not particularly naive when it comes to when he's gone for too long and he hasn't answered too many calls and he hasn't been available. We're a bit more attuned to these signs, and we kind
What's happening? And when you ask him, hey, where were you? And you weren't saying what was happening, you were vague.
We've had friends that have been cheated on that tell us all about it, and they tell us all the signs. Our mums might tell us all the signs and stuff. Whereas for men, that conversation is so sacred. They don't really have that with each other. So they're also missing. So they go in with a little bit of naivety that women just don't cheat whatsoever. They just think my wife would never. That's their common thing, that she would never. And the other thing is they're not attuned to the signs. They're not attuned to the signals. So when she is depriving him of affection or depriving him of attention, or when she starts taking care of herself and going out a little bit more or making more of an effort to go to work, they just see that as normal feminine behavior. They just see that as, girls getting dressed up there. They don't necessarily see the signs that it's a change in dynamic. They don't pick up the signals as much. They become a little bit curious, but they don't become accusatory the same way that.
Really?
Yeah.
But were you saying, why do women cheat more?
Right. This is something that every single human being needs to know. This isn't even a man or woman thing, but it's kind of like this. Everything somebody does is a reflection of who they are and how they're feeling. All right. So if we use Sadia's example right here, you are in a relationship with a woman, and let's say she never wears sexy clothes at all. She just doesn't do it. Okay. Whatever reason, she just does not wear sexy clothes. If one day she starts wearing sexy clothes randomly, that is something that you need to look at, because that change in behavior corresponds to a change in mental process. It doesn't necessarily mean that she's cheating on you, but it means that there's a massive shift, and it's something you might want to have a conversation about. If she starts, let's say she always puts heart-filled emojis in her text. So whenever she sends you a text, it's like heart emoji, and all sorts of like colorful emojis in her text messages, smiley faces, whatever. If she stops doing that one day, it's because she has decided that showing you that extra love and affection by adding those emojis, even though it's like a small thing to do, it's like just an emoji, but she doesn't want to show all that extra affection anymore. There's a reason for it. It's not happening for nothing. So yeah, this is things men need to be aware of. Like not just men, but people in general, but be focused or be attentive to what's actually going on. Why are they doing the things that they do? Or like, what are they doing and what is it implying? Because if their behavior transforms, you can bet your sweet ass there's a reason for it, and it might not be beneficial to you.
I'm saying who cheats more based on your experience of conversations you're having and what you're noticing.
What are you thinking about why women cheat more?
That's true. In my personal experience with the women that do cheat, it's not that all women cheat, but the women that do cheat, it's very little to do with the woman herself. It's more to do with the man she selects.
Really?
In my experience, I can look at a couple and tell by the man if she's going to cheat. Where the men and her have a very strong dynamic, where it's very clear that they know each other inside out and where they can be themselves completely. And more so than anything, I can tell she feels safe in his company. It's unlikely she cheats. But where I feel like she's kind of the boss, or she feels like she doesn't respect his opinion, and it's not necessarily she's just like he's kind of allowed himself to take that backseat, where she can disrespect him openly, where she feels like she can tell him anything and he just instantly believes it and follows her commands, it sets him in a position where she doesn't have a fear of losing him. And as a result of no fear of losing him, there's an openness to try alternatives, because she knows if worst case scenario he finds out, he's still going to stay. And it's
a fairly dismal view of people.
I know.
You've just put forward.
Well, unless they have,
because what we're saying is that
unless they don't have values within themselves.
Right. The thing that's missing from this conversation is values on the men's and the women's side. Is that it's kind of, the idea there with women is that if they don't respect their man, they'll cheat, as opposed to they'll cheat if they lack the values. They'll prevent someone from cheating.
But I would imagine
this is an interesting thing now. What is Sadia saying? This queen, Miss Sadia Khan, aka Sadia Psychology. What is she saying? She's saying that, look, right? If a woman thinks a man is a wimp, a simp, a pussy, if that's what she thinks, she's not going to respect him, and if she doesn't respect him, she's very, very, very likely to cheat. And she's saying that when she looks at relationships and she looks at the dynamic in which the woman does not have that level of respect for the man, those women tend to cheat. And what Matthew Hussey is saying now is, that's such a damning view of relationships, because what about having morals and ethics and values, and what about these sorts of things? And it should be on the person to have morals, ethics and values. And of course it should, yes. So in an ideal world, a woman who does not respect her man is still not going to cheat. She'll probably just tell him she doesn't respect him or just find someone else. In an ideal world. But we don't actually live in an ideal world, do we? We live in the real freaking world. And in the real world, what she's saying is absolutely spot on. Now, here's the thing. I know that she's like a relationship coach, but you see, like, whereas like I'm more of like a dating coach, I'm more like helping men to get into relationships. From what I've seen of her, she's like dealing with relationships themselves. I don't think Matthew Hussey deals with relationships, because if he did, he would know that what she's saying is just completely true. Women are not angels. They're not Snow White. They're not Pocahontas. They're not Ariel. They're just human beings. And they can be pretty cold and vicious and ruthless and heartbreakery if they feel compelled to. But yeah, so like to a man who's watching, in an ideal world, you can be with a woman who doesn't respect you and she's still not going to cheat. But the truth is, in the real world, if your woman does not respect you, she is probably going to cheat. And even if she doesn't cheat, your relationship is going to be dog crap anyway. So yeah, you absolutely need that level of respect. Should somebody treat you well, even if you are a quote-unquote pushover, even if they can take liberties? Yes, they should. But that's not the world we live in.
Their values determines what they select in the process. When you have those values that open you up to sex, you tend to select people who have a kind of agreeableness that allows for that. And I would say the same for men. Men who know they have a propensity to cheat are probably not going to select a very strong-minded woman who will say, absolutely not, I will walk away if this happens. They tend to select. I think their values combine, it affects their selection process. And so they select a more agreeable and less secure individual to begin with.
But you must know, I know plenty of very strong women who have been cheated on.
Yeah, I do know plenty of strong women who've been cheated on, but in the process of being cheated on, at the time of selection, they weren't strong. I would say that there's something in this, most people who've been severely hurt. Look, cheating is not something that makes you an evil person. I have to put it out there. I personally have never cheated, but I'm not saying this as a moral how go. I don't see it as an evil trait. I just see it as a misbehavior. Some people are cheaters and have terrible other traits. It's just an addition. Some people are driven in a desperate state or whatever it is. But when you've been severely hurt by somebody, you have to look at the day you selected them. Chances are, if you select somebody who's very difficult and treats you badly, and then on top of that cheats, the day you selected them, you were not in a secure place.
I don't know if I can buy that. That may be true for some,
or maybe you didn't ask all the right questions.
Yeah,
you didn't get all the information.
The signs.
But I think there is a kind of, there are plenty of people who wind up with people who end up treating them very poorly.
Yeah.
Where there was just they just could not have foreseen that this person was.
I always argue the opposite. I say humans, nobody lies. And the reason I say nobody lies. And the reason I say that is verbally we can all lie. I can sit here and tell you I'm a blonde. But you as a human being are responsible for assessing whether my words and behaviors align.
Right, but I don't know if you're going to cheat on me in 5 years.
This right here is... Okay, where do I even start with this? It's kind of like this. What Sadia is basically saying is that people leave clues, okay? So she's saying that if you're a woman and you're with a man who beats you up, there were clues along the way that this was the kind of person that he was. It didn't just happen out of nowhere like spontaneous human combustion. If you're with a woman who lies to you a lot, well, again, there were clues. There were clues about her behavior. Maybe she told you stories of times when she'd lied in the past. Maybe you saw her lying to other people, but she didn't think you'd mind because you were in on it and it's aimed at this other person and not you. People leave clues. Every relationship I've been in, and traits I did not like about the person, I've been in relationships where people have treated me quite badly. There was evidence. There were certain things, and it's like, number one, I had the ability to see those signs and act on them. I had the ability to find somebody better. I had the ability to recognize what was happening and choose to walk in another direction, but I actually didn't. And what she's arguing about here is that you have to take personal responsibility for the situation that you find yourself in. So if you find yourself with someone who is narcissistic, overly narcissistic and controlling, you find yourself in that situation. It's all right, what do I need to do to make that not happen again? So when Matthew's going, oh, well, you don't understand, there are people who, they're so smart, but they just couldn't have seen this coming. You know, when you say like, I just couldn't have seen this coming, what are you basically saying? Well, if you just couldn't see it coming, then you don't need to take any responsibility for it, or you don't need to take the appropriate steps to make sure that doesn't happen again, because you just couldn't see it coming. Boo-hoo. Poor you. Woe is you. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. It's like you're walking down the street and you just got struck by a bolt of lightning and it caused both of your kneecaps to explode and like oil started coming out your ears, and none of that had anything to do with you or anything that you could have done about that. Boo-hoo, poor you. But that's not actually the way it is. But what I suspect Matthew doesn't want to see, and what Sadia does see, and what I see, is that if you take responsibility for yourself and you say, okay, look, it's bad that this thing happened to me, but what signs could I have seen? Like what evidence was there that this could occur? What? How can I actually move forward from this? How did I actually allow this to happen? If you start asking yourself these sorts of questions, well, then you can actually grow. Because you know what? I never had the same relationship twice. You know why? Because when stuff happened, I was like, this happened. That's why that happened. I ain't letting that happen again. And that's why my clients tend to do pretty damn well as well.
I personally...
I can't go into a relationship going, I know for sure you won't cheat on me in 5 years. And if by the rationale that you said men cheat in relationships, which is that they essentially feel like they've put in their service, like they're in the army and they've done their time. And at that point they feel like, God, you know what? I really feel entitled to an escort or to this stage. By that rationale, you couldn't have seen it with that guy, because back when he was putting in his service, he was a totally committed man.
I would say that even with men, I would say there's a couple of things. I would say that it's not that I can, even with my own husband, it's not that I know for sure he's going to cheat or not cheat. But when somebody has a propensity, and how you know they have a propensity is, chances are most cheaters have cheated in the past and they've told you something. They won't tell you directly, but they might give you hints where they might say, oh, and we weren't working out. And so towards the end, I met somebody, and they'll use that common phrase towards the end. Or they might say, or you might just notice that they are a hypersexual. They need that as a form of connection all the time. So if you deprive them of that, the key thing is you've got to know what people are like in terms of what they do when they're at their worst. If you've noticed at their worst, they can be emotionally abusive. At their worst, they can be cheaters. They kind of show you that in the courting stage before marriage.
Sure, but someone can be hypersexual and just be great sex in a relationship. How are you to know that hypersexual means they're going to have an inability to be monogamous versus they've just got a very high sex drive that's going to make for a great sex life in a relationship?
If I deprive them of that hypersexuality is not going to go anywhere. So
dear, this woman is spitting so much truth. Bars. Absolute pure white hot fire bars. So here's the thing. You're with someone who is hypersexual, they're very sexual, right? That's okay. Let me go this. People get into relationships with a spoken / unspoken, mostly unspoken list of requirements, demands, okay? Hypersexual person, what does that mean? It means they need sex at least every other day, okay? Maybe every day. Maybe if they don't get it in one day, they're just fit to be tired, as I say, angry, just full of vengeance and bubbling at the seams. But the point is they need sex, right? Somebody might need touch. Okay, my girl right now, she needs physical touch. She needs that. And the point is, it's like, you have to know what kind of person you are with, and you need to give them what they need. And if you don't, you must realize that things will start to go bad. So even if they don't cheat, because Matthew Hussey is going to say, well, they still shouldn't cheat. Yeah, I guess. But even if they don't, bad things are still going to occur. And something that I personally have realized is, everybody looking at this video, everybody watching me right now, right? You're watching me in my chocolatey brown skin. And most of you have got jobs. Most of you has. You have jobs, you work, You know that if you go into your job and don't put in effort, right? You know there's like, your job is very transactional, which is that you do this work which is required, we are going to pay you this money. You know that once you stop doing that work, you ain't going to get the money no more. You know that. You'll be sacked and you're gone. So you go to work every day, like you wake up at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, 5 in the morning for some of you, and you don't want to do it, but you do it because you know you have to, because you don't want to be on the street. But we think when it comes to relationships that You know, the effort I put into my job, I have to do that for a relationship. It should just come easy. So I can just do whatever and this person's going to hang around. Even though you knew that to get the relationship, you needed to put in effort anyway. Putting your best foot forward, making sure that you're in shape, being witty, confident, all of this sort of stuff, putting effort in the bedroom, coming up with fun dates. You did that to get the relationship. But then once you have the thing that you want, it's like, yeah, whatever, yeah. But it don't work like that. People have things that they want and that they need. They do. For instance, I knew someone who, when he met his wife, he took her to loads of fancy hotels and restaurants. Then his financial situation changed and he wasn't able to take her to those restaurants anymore. Then she lost a lot of interest and she cheated on him. Is it good that she cheated on him just because he was poor? No. But this is the real world and this is what people do. And the fact is, this is just the actual fact. The actual fact is, as a man, you need to keep whatever you had when you first attracted a woman. You do. If you don't, bad things will happen. Actually, it's kind of true for women as well, but it is what it is. So this woman needed that. She liked the high life. She liked a certain lifestyle. Is it good that she needed it or bad? It just is what it is. And if you're with that person who needs that, you got to give them what they need or it's screwed.
You know that if I am dealing with somebody hypersexual, no problem. But I have to understand with their hypersexuality means if and when I deprive them of that, I open a door. Similarly, I'm a hyper emotional, I'm hyper clingy, all those things. Luckily, my partner's very kind of responsive. If he deprives me of that thing that is very clear to him from day one, chances are, God forbid, who knows, something might happen. It's when you deprive people what they should.
You're letting people off the hook so easily.
Really?
Yeah, because if your husband wasn't giving you attention or time or whatever, I would assume that there would be 200 conversations that would happen prior to you deciding, I'm going to go off and get with a bloke on the side.
Yeah.
The same is true the other way around.
You may not cheat, you might just end it.
I'm personally not a cheat, so I understand.
If we're taking the guy you're talking about that's hypersexual and the woman who hasn't had sex with him for a period of time, there's nothing that excuses the inability to have the 100 conversations that need to happen.
That's what most people don't do.
I would love if that was true.
That's what you're saying.
I would love that to be true.
What I take issue with is not calling out. It's almost like a calling out of the person who's not had sex with the person, as opposed to calling out the person who's not having the conversations.
I understand what you mean, but here's the thing: when we get into relationships with people, it comes with conditions. Nobody's unconditional. Now we sign an imaginary contract that I've seen the needs you have, you've seen the needs I have. We naturally expect our partners to guess our needs. If people are we're in a very, all praise be to God, privileged position where we understand the importance of communication. The average person who's never done any self-help or who's never done anything will interpret, my wife doesn't have sex with me, she doesn't love me. They're not.
Yep. So it's funny, it's like this is just loaded with so much truth. I kind of don't know where to start, but most people haven't done any self-help. So what's Matthew Hussey saying? He's basically saying, like, look, right, somebody doesn't get what they need and they should express the fact that they're not getting what they need, whatever that thing is. There's something that they need, they're not getting it, they should say something. Ergo, if they don't say that they need something and then they cheat on you because of it, that is on them because they should have said it. And it's like multiple things can be true at once. So it's true that from their perspective they should say something. It's true, that's very true. But it's also true that from your perspective, you should be aware that they're probably not going to say anything because most people don't. Most people haven't done any form of self-help. I think Sadia said that, was about to say it. Most people have not done any self-help. Okay? Most people aren't really too comfortable with having direct conversations. Is that right? No, but if you're living in the real world, it is what it is. Should I be able to go to a bar, put my phone down, walk away for 5 minutes and come back and know that my phone's still there? In an ideal world, I should. People shouldn't steal my phone. But if I do that, my phone is gone and it's just what it is. And if I do that and I lose my phone, I'm an idiot because I should have known what would happen. So we got to live in the real world. If you're in a relationship with someone should you sit down with them and like have real conversations and say, this is what I want and expect, and I'd love to know what you also want and expect? 1,000%. But, you know, I mean, you should. You totally should. So if you're watching this video, you should. But you should also be aware that unless you select a partner who has actually done some form of work on themselves and is actually aware of what motivates them to a degree and likes to confront demons and have real conversations and connect, which isn't most people, then you're effectively dealing someone who's operating like at the whims of their subconscious programming without knowing what the hell they're actually doing and what's going on. And you should be aware that these people are probably going to act in ways that, well, they're probably just going to do some stuff you don't like. Stuff like this, stuff like cheating, stuff like not opening up. So it would behoove you, yes, to try and get these people to open up, but also you got to preemptively guess what they want and need. You kind of need to. Okay, don't hate the messenger. Like, don't hate the player, hate the game. This is just the way it is.
Thinking I need to vocalize this. Similarly, a woman saying my man's never complimented me. Do I tell him I want more compliments, or do I go with the guy at work who naturally compliments me? Human nature is flawed. So instead, I get it's totally wrong. It's not a justification. It's more just understanding that ideally we should have these conversations. Ideally, we should be emotionally articulate. And realistically, it doesn't happen. So the best thing we can do is select people who are values naturally align with us, and people show us our values quite early on.
But based on what you've just said, I would say the best thing we can do is partner with a good communicator.
Yeah.
Not partner with someone that we just hope to God we always meet their values, because they can't communicate, and if we ever don't meet them, they're going to be running.
I would agree.
That's why so many people break up, is because they get into a relationship without communicating their true values and who they truly are. And they get together based on attraction or based on common likes and interests. So.
My greatest fear early on in meeting someone would always be if we can't have conversations.
Really?
Because if you take a version of what you're talking about that I think shows up in early dating, it's ghosting. Right? What is ghosting? I've decided I don't want you anymore, or I'm not getting my needs met in some way, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I do the ultimate in not communicating. I just disappear. And when that happens, it's what we have is someone in front of us who cannot communicate. So the answer to that, to me, isn't how do I figure out how to make sure I do everything right next time so that I don't get ghosted? The answer is, how do I make sure that I pre-select for the kind of person that when things get difficult or when they don't get their needs met, has a conversation with me instead of just disappears off the face of the earth?
Yeah. But have you not seen in your practice sometimes some people have never done, like never cheated or anything like that, but something in this relationship or something has triggered them and they become a person they don't recognize? But I do agree, it's down to poor communication, because every need can be communicated. But do you think it is just a character flaw, or do you think it's a flaw in the dynamic of the relationship? Or have
if someone
you been
cheats?
Or have you been in relationships where that person I could have cheated on, this person I can never think of doing? Do you think it's a dynamic? For me personally, I would say it's more of a character thing, because I've got religious beliefs and blah, blah. But I think most people, it's a dynamic thing rather than a character thing.
I mean, I don't think the rest of the world needs religious beliefs to have that character thing.
Yeah.
I think that's the golden rule is enough.
Yeah. But
All right. Now, this video has been quite long as it is, so I'm going to basically end it here and then do another video. But yeah, if somebody cheats, is that about character or dynamic? And the truth is, I'd say it's largely dynamic. It largely is. There are women who have cheated on one man but would never dream of cheating on another. There are women who act like prudes and like they're, don't come to me with that horrible sex stuff with one man, but then they act like the biggest whore with another. There's all sorts of stuff like that going on. It's totally dynamic. It's like the energy of one person brings out the energy of another, and the energy of this man brings out the energy in this woman, which actually kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, which is that as the man, you kind of set the tone for the relationship. Now, something Sadia is kind of hinting at, which I don't think Matthew Hussey really wants to face, is that women need to feel like their man is a man, like a man. They need to feel like you're a man. And if they don't feel like you're a man, bad things will happen. You know, like, let's say you're with a woman and she disrespects you in some way. She puts you down some way. You don't say anything. You don't do anything. Her respect for you drops. It goes do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And then the more that happens, the less she's going to want you, and the more she's going to be tempted by other men, whether or not she does anything with that temptation. On the flip side, if she disrespects you and you go, whoa, don't talk to me like that. No. Don't talk to me like that. Do. Women need to feel that. And everything, here's the thing, it's like they're both right in a sense. So Sadia, what I like about her is that she's just looking at human beings like she's looking at an ant colony. For instance, like, let's say, there's like species of spider where the female spider will eat the head of the male while they're having sex. Is that right? No, but it's just how spiders operate. So when we look at spiders, or we look at the animal kingdom in general, we just accept that these are the things that these animals do, and it is what it is. But then when it comes to human beings, we have this belief of how it should be, and then we get annoyed, or we get offended if the reality doesn't match the belief. But you know what I mean? It doesn't really matter. It's just like, it is what it is. Reality is the way reality is. Should you select for people who are likely to have a good and open conversation with you? Yeah, you should. Of course you should. That just makes perfect sense. But on the flip side, should you also be aware that a shockingly high percentage of people are going to not know themselves to a great enough degree to be able to verbalize what's wrong with them, and will probably just do things off the back of that are, well, detrimental to you. You should know that. Should you also know that if you're in a relationship with someone, there's certain things that they have that they want and that they need, and if they don't get that, that spells a downfall for your relationship? Yeah, you should. Should you know that as a man, the woman that you're with needs to feel safe with you? She needs to feel like you're the man. You are her man. You're her man, so she's safe with you. You should know that. Should you know that in order for her to feel safe with you, you have to stand tall in your own power, and if she does something disrespectful, you have to stop that immediately. That doesn't mean that you're gonna abuse her emotionally or physically. It means that you put up the barrier and say, yo, you need to stop that right now. Does it mean that? Yeah, it does. Anyway, look, I'm only 19 minutes for a video that's like an hour and 20 minutes long. So I'm probably going to do another 2 reaction videos to this. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you have. And like the video, comment the video, subscribe to the channel. Have yourself an amazing day. Take care and goodbye.